All right, if everyone is ready, I want to welcome everyone to this special panel discussion we have today in conjunction with our exhibition, Visions of Transcendence. So Visions of Transcendence combines artwork from incarcerated and unhoused artists in the East and the West. The reason we wanted to organize this exhibition is, well, the Wyndham Museum, as many of you know, is a collection of art and artifacts from the Cold War period in the socialist countries. But in our exhibitions, we always try to make meaningful connections between past and present and between the there and the here, so to speak. So when we decided to organize an exhibition on incarcerated artists in socialist countries, we realized doing that in the United States, it's impossible not to also focus on and highlight the situation in the United States, which is the country with the highest percentage of incarcerated people worldwide. So what started as an exhibition about communist incarceration with some references to the here and now soon turned into an exhibition where 25% still connects to the East Bloc countries and 75% focuses on the United States and a little bit on Western Europe. And for good reason, I would say. The idea of the exhibition is also to show that the Cold War period and politics in general are not a question of black and white, one camp versus the other camp, capitalism versus communism or whatever, but that humans are humans, that they share very basic experiences and also share very basic needs, existential needs to express themselves, to share their humanity. And I think if that is the message that comes out of this exhibition, I would be very happy. I'm also very grateful for the people and organizations we worked with who made this exhibition possible. And two of them are sitting very closely to me, Annie Buckley and Meetra Johansen from Prison Arts Collective and Huma House. Yeah. They were really instrumental in helping us bringing this exhibition together. We also welcome three stunning artists, and if you didn't check out their work yet, please do so after this panel discussion. They're all represented in the exhibition. They are Christian Branscombe, who is with us in person today, over there. Ezequiel Gonzalez, who joins us via Zoom from Mexico. And Kenneth Webb, who joins us from his prison cell on the phone. So Christian Branscombe, who is with us, is an artist and independent coach who served 24 years in prison. Artist and art teacher Ezequiel Gonzalez served 12 years in prison before his 23-year sentence was commuted by Governor Brown, and he was subsequently deported to Mexico. So that's why he joins us on via Zoom. And then Kenneth Webb is a self-taught artist who was incarcerated when he was 18 years old and is serving a life sentence. And that is why he calls in through his phone. Then a little bit about Prison Art Collective and Huma House. Prison Arts Collective provides access to the transformative power of the arts for communities impacted by incarceration. Its model prioritizes creating a safe space for creative practice, art history, and reflection. Classes organized by Prison Arts Collective include collaborative workshops, integrated arts, and the only comprehensive arts facilitator training and mentoring program for currently incarcerated people in the country. It is based on the idea that art is a human right and envisions a collaborative and inclusive society where everyone has access to the arts to promote well-being and empowerment. Prison Arts Collective was founded in 2013 by artist and writer Annie Buckley, who is the organization's director as well as a professor and associate dean at San Diego State University. Since 2013, the organization that brought transformative arts program to over 7,000 people in 14 correctional institutions across California. Prison Arts Collective is supported by the California Arts Council, California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, and the National Endowment for the Arts. And then about Huma House. Huma House is a non-profit organization located in Los Angeles, established with the idea that art exhibitions can serve as a potent activist tool. Their core mission revolves around the belief that art can be a transformative force, providing alternative healing methods and that guide nations toward peace and enable youth to tap into their full potential. Initially gaining prominence for their powerful and thought-provoking art exhibitions, Huma House was bolstered by profound community support. In addition to their art exhibitions, Huma House runs an art education program in South Central Los Angeles. This program provides local teens with tools and opportunities to express themselves through art. Huma House was co-founded by Meetra Johansen and Tobias Stubbs and continues its commitment to the community and the transformative power of art in South Central Los Angeles. Before founding Huma House, Meetra worked at Gagosian Gallery, New York, and Philip Martin Gallery in Los Angeles, before changing gears completely and volunteering at San Quentin Prison, California, which then led to her first exhibition with Huma House. So I'm sure there is a lot to talk about today. Again, please give a very warm welcome to our very special guests.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you so much to Yus and to Emma and to everyone here at the Wende Museum for this incredible exhibition, Visions of Transcendence. It's so stunning. I'm sure you all agree. Oh, I don't want to assume, but I think it's stunning. And it's just so amazing to see the evolution of an exhibition like this, overlooking at how it's been over the past 10 years that I've seen arts, you know, from folks inside to outside and how that's changed. So in a little bit near the end, we're going to dive more deeply into that. But we wanted to start by asking each of the artists to introduce themselves a little bit more and talk about their creative practice while incarcerated and now, or just general. How do we want to start? Talk about your creative practice.
Yeah.
Ezequiel, do you want to start?
Okay.
Sure. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for having me as well. It's interesting to be on this big screen, seeing all you guys on my little screen. Well, my name is Ezequiel Gonzalez Lemus. I started with the Prison Arts Collective program when it started off at Chino at CIM. I was at that time serving a 23-year sentence for a crime I committed when I was 15 years old. And I was commuted by Governor Brown, but through the process and the arts, for me, that's what saved my life. It was the arts. It helped me understand and have a sense of community. When the PAC team, the teaching artists would come inside and teach us about art, teach us about art history, they would talk about these exhibitions happening on the outside. And to me, this was new. To me, this was something different. But I used to get lost with my paintbrush and my canvas. And that's where I started building for myself from the inside out and started having that sense of community within the program, within my peers, teaching each other how to paint, sharing the skills, sharing the material, and just learning how to socialize and be humans again. Because I was once a gang member, we were all in there for some heavy crimes. And at the end of the day, we were all trying to better ourselves. And the Prison Arts Collective program was an opportunity, and it continues to be an amazing opportunity for many people incarcerated inside. And today it gave me a career now that I'm outside living here in Tecate, Mexico, to be an artist, to continue my path as an artist. And I'm very happy to see my work over there at the Wende Museum. I'm very excited and just happy and honored to be here.
Great. Thank you so much, Ezequiel. Christian, do you want to?
You have 60 seconds remaining.
A bit about your creative practice?
Sure. This thing's on? All right. I was part of a program at Lancaster State Prison for about 20 years, where in the beginning, I came into an arts and corrections program that was run by the state that provided the supplies, and we kind of, every year we would do something for Toys for Tots, or we'd give back to the community in some way, sometimes the battered women's shelter. And we started feeling this sense of engagement with other people through this means of communication, right? Which is kind of abstract in prison, right? The last thing you get asked in prison is, what do you think, what do you feel, and who are you, right? Those are, they already know who you are. You're whatever you did at whatever age you were, and that's who you are, right? So it was a new ethos. It was a place to grow and kind of expand and try to find some part of you that you didn't even know existed. So in that process, we got really attached to this idea. And I ended up on a yard where the majority of the yard was life without the possibility of parole. And so probably 400 of the 600 guys on this yard were never going home. We're dying in prison, right? So we stepped out of prison politics. We're like, look, our job is to be a human being. I want to be alive today. I want to feel what I feel and find out who I am, And in this place, it was an opportunity to do something that you rarely get to do in prison, which is give back, right? So in that space, you start seeing people willing to sacrifice their pride for certain things, or like, hey, this means something to me, so I'll give back in a different way that I normally wouldn't, they become vulnerable. So in that space, in 2009, they took arts and corrections all the way out of CDC-R, right? The rehabilitative part of it wasn't considered rehabilitative enough, so they took away the art program. So we decided, if you give us a room, we'll pay for our own art supplies, and we just want to give back to the community. And they really couldn't say no to that because it was free, right? So I'm like, all right, good. You can have the room, see what you do. And there's probably 9 of us that were skilled artists, and we did much like he said, we gave back to our yard, we taught people how to draw, taught them about perspective drawing, and then at some point this idea comes in, well, what do you have to say? There's some part of you that wants to be expressed, or like, hey, these people are listening, what do you want to say? What's important to you? And that introspective journey tends to be a really healing journey. And so this space became a spot where we didn't allow racism in the space. We didn't do gang, no drugs, no. You could do whatever you wanted on the yard, but in this space, it was sacred ground. Like, you weren't going to do those things here. So it was an interesting dynamic because people got to experience things they'd never experienced before. People coming in from the street, talking to you like a human being, having something, giving back to other people that were moved by that. A lot of times we do portraits of people that were lost in war for their families. We give back we donated about $20,000, $30,000 a year to charities, just giving what we wanted to give. So this space became a nucleus for, progressive thinking. It was a place where you might experience or come across a new idea. And so this became the spot where everybody came just to get good advice. Like, hey, I'm having a problem with my wife. I don't know what to do. I'm like, all right, well, how about this? Like ideas that would never exist in any other space because we're all engaging on a more intimate level. So though it was an art program and it was designed to be expressive and it did end up deepening all of our individual narratives and direction in life, it really became a place where you could be a human being in prison.
Nice. So I have Kenneth Webb on the line right now, and I thought it's a really special moment because Kenneth and Christian were both inside together, and Christian was Kenneth's art teacher while he was incarcerated, and so it's kind of a special moment right now because to have them on stage here together. And Kenneth, I was wondering if you could talk about how you and Christian met, and because Christian just talked about what it was, forming the art room and forming this, nonprofit that was giving back to the community through art and as a teacher. But what was it like for you as a student and then becoming a co-founder of this organization with Christian? What was your experience with the art room at Lancaster?
Well, hello, everyone.
All right, we got you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can all hear you.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I think as a student, of the art program at Lancaster, it was an extremely humbling experience. I think that the average person just stepping into prison is always confronted with things that are just, the deep unknown, and very few people willingly step into spaces where, they put themselves in that space. And for me, I had no prior background with, art in the direction of how Healing Through Arts was doing it, in terms of giving back, in terms of painting, and the technical side of it. And it really broadened my horizons in so many levels. I think one of the biggest ones was just social interaction. In that space, it fosters everyone to kind of interact as they would if they were free, across cultural, social, and ethnic lines. Those barriers are really broken down, and we were able to build from a more authentic place.
Thank you, Ken. When I first started Huma House, and I met Christian, was one of the first people I met, and Kenneth was one of the first people that I was writing letters to inside. What I was really surprised by was that inside prison, there's a lot of, I guess it's called prison politics, that there's a lot of segregation inside, and based on the color of your skin, or what if you're coming inside with gang affiliation. And what was really revolutionary about what Kenneth and Christian did with the art room is that they created this safe space where you come in and all those labels are cast off. And that was a very revolutionary thing to do inside Lancaster, inside prison in general. And a lot of the men inside wanted to do that, but they didn't have that space. And so for me, it was so exciting to hear that, you and Kenneth actively created that, and that art was this medium that kind of, melted all the barriers, and where, like Kenneth was saying, it just became like a place where you could become social and be vulnerable and express yourself. So, yeah.
Hi, Kenneth. I haven't seen you in a long time, but it's really nice to hear you and have you join us as well. Two things that just came out from everything that was shared so far are the words humanity and community. And these are two things that I think have been through lines of all the work that we've done. There's so many people involved in Prison Arts Collective, as you can see just from this little conversation and from all of the people across the state. And this idea of forming community and finding one another's humanity, I think it's one of the most key things that happens throughout arts programming in prisons, whether it's formed from inside, from outside, or even, I think most profoundly, like this connection or collaboration like Ezequiel was speaking about, when you have people from inside and outside just operating together within a space in an art community. And yes, there's bars, and yes, there are power structures that no one can deny, and yes, there are racial barriers and politics, but within that space, it's almost like this magical reality that a lot of us dream about, right? But to have that within a prison, like one of the darkest spaces possible, is very profound. It's almost like everything that most of us love about art, but in sharp relief against the background of something so difficult. When we first started Prison Arts Collective, I met Ezequiel about 6 months after we started, and he was a huge part of the program as a student, and then as a teacher. We have a teacher training program, as Yus was mentioning, and many of the folks who teach on our team are currently incarcerated. And when we first went to Lancaster Prison, which was a few years later after we'd already established ourselves and were working, we were on I'm always like, put us, where there's nothing else. Put us where they really need us. So we were in this gym in a level 4 high security yard. Many of our participants, just got out of solitary or what have you, were really difficult place. And we were out there making art with whatever we could find in this prison gym, with the guards watching, with tragically like a cage that sometimes a man would be standing in, watching the class. this is the reality that we're people are dealing with in this country. And so they kept telling us, come to the yard where the art is, come to where these gentlemen were. And we're like, they don't need us, like they're good. But when we finally met them, it was such a really nice experience to have an exchange with an arts group inside and an arts group that goes across. And that was such a profound moment to ask those questions you were talking about, like, well, what does this art mean to you? And then when we did start working with them, it was really fun to see the work evolve a little, so.
It was profound for us because you can write a letter or do something that's really amazing, but if nobody's there to see it or receive it, there's no punch. I mean, it's just an empty act. You have to have somebody listening. Somebody has to be engaged on the other end of the action, right? So you're right. We had a very cultivated art space where there was a lot of art getting done and charities and all these things. But what we didn't have is that breath of life that came in and said, "Hey, I want to hear what you got to say." Like we would send out stuff to galleries, but we weren't a part of that. We didn't see any part of that. We didn't see pictures of it. So these things would revolve around our actions, but we weren't a part of it. So when you came in, that really transformed things because every week they're going, okay, we got to really show out because they're going to be here next week. And I think one of the most profound moments was when we would do these really abstract things and then Annie would come.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
This will happen every 5 minutes.
That's what the prison does when they have phone calls. They make sure you're talking to a prisoner.
Yeah.
Flashbacks.
Yeah, really. I have a little PTSD over this right here. Hit the ground. No.
I'll try to turn it down when I hear it.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not that bad. But and when they came through and they said, okay, I don't want you to tell me what this piece means. And they just shared what they saw in the piece. And they're like, this person actually sees me. They see a part of me that I didn't think somebody else could see through this introspective journey, right? So there's a part of them that might have been shared in that moment that they couldn't share verbally or wouldn't share normally, but it's because it's intimate. And on the other end of it, we're going like, share something that means something. Share something that somebody doesn't know about you. What does that mean to you? And what is this, and to have somebody else come in and see it, acknowledge it, and connect with it was very humanizing for them as people.
I actually have a question for Ezequiel and Christian. How has your creative practice as an artist changed, if it at all, from being inside and being in that space to now coming out of prison and in this world? And has your artistic practice changed at all, or has it kind of stayed the same?
Go for it, Ezequiel.
Okay, thank you. Well, let me see if I got the question right, because it was so how has our artistic practice changed or evolved in any way since release?
Yeah, because right, yeah. I work with one artist, and Omid, who's in the show, and he was talking about sometimes this pressure of being confined, or if he was in solitary confinement, he'd have this explosion of creative surge because he was trying to find inspiration as a lifeline. And sometimes being on the outside, there's so much baggage with being in this world that sometimes his creativity is dampened, and that surprised me. And I wondered if you had a similar experience or if it's totally different.
Okay, good. So yeah, my practice has actually changed a lot. So here behind me, I got two pieces. On this side, I got a photorealistic painting, which is what I practiced while I was inside of prison. And to achieve that level of detail, I got to put in so many hours. And I got out in 2019. And since then, trying to get back into reality, getting out into a different country. I spoke English most of the time in prison. So also getting adjusted to speaking Spanish. I was talking it kind of weird at one point. And then starting a new project of theater here. So in prison, I was also involved with the Actors Gang Prison Project, where we also did transformative theater classes. And when I got out, I started doing that, which left me with less time to paint. So, but I still wanted to paint. I needed that brush in my hand. I needed that painting here, So I started developing this style when I went to Puebla. So this here is El Cerro Cuchumá, which is right here in Tecate on the border. And it's one part San Diego, the other part is Tecate. So I did this painting of an influence of artists that I saw on my trip to Puebla. So, being free now, I have the opportunity to travel. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about life, and being able to go down to my hometown. I'm from Puebla, and seeing all these amazing artists on the streets, I was just impressed by their work. And I saw one guy that did this kind of work here where he just left off the canvas. And I see it kind of compared to this work, a little bit more lazy, like, we're just gonna leave it like that. And it feels good. And it feels good to say that, like, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it like that. I ain't gonna worry about those brush strokes anymore. And in this painting, I couldn't do that out here. I was so like, oh, I gotta cover that. I couldn't leave a little white showing. So I think I'm learning to relax as an artist, not taking things so like rigidness. And also that piece that I have over there, separation anxiety, also shows the progress of liberating myself from this kind of style, which is so contrasting. And out here now in the real world, I'm able to dedicate time to painting. I'm also teaching art, and I'm also teaching theater. We started a theater program here about a year and a half ago called Comedia del Arte Tecate. If you guys follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Comedia del Arte Tecate, you guys will be able to see all the videos, all the impact we're doing in the community. I train people now to become facilitators and teaching artists of this program. And that's also the plan, to start doing the same thing here with art. And I just want to mention that that's the structure that I learned inside of prison through the Prison Art Collective program, when all the teaching artists will come inside and teach us art. And then I was teaching inside alongside with them. And that just helped me a lot now, gave me the skills, being out here in the real world, to start a program to help people. We're going to elementary schools now, working with little kids. And it's just amazing. I just feel so privileged. And the vision is to go into the prison system as well here in Mexico and take it to them, because art transforms lives. They already have some art programs, and I also want to get involved with them. And theater is also a certain form of art therapeutic style that is helping a lot of people here. It helped me inside of prison. And it was like, it goes hand in hand with the art. So that's my practice today. It's mixed. It's a mixed practice, I would say.
I found for myself when I got home, I did 25 years and then got out. And the majority of that time we were part of this art program that I was in. And for me, this was a way to connect. This was a place to find my humanity and to share my humanity. But in prison, that was the only way I could share my humanity. There was no other way for you to see me as a human being. Like, we couldn't hang out, we didn't talk. You had to have a reason. It's all business, right? Like, if I'm talking to you as a prisoner, there has to be a reason for it, or they call it overfamiliarity, right? Like, if you treat somebody like a human being, that's unacceptable. So in that space, we found our humanity. And so I think I held on to it like a lifeline. I really just, put my all into it. And it was a place where, some of my greatest moments developed, all the way to amends projects with the people I directly harmed, to other people on the yards, to, restorative justice projects, to, helping with plays and backgrounds. Anything you can think of, we got involved with and really explored who we were in that experience. But when I came home, it was almost a shock, because I could be a human being. I could be addressed directly. I could have the food that you're eating. I could wear clothes, and I'm whole in a weird way. Like, another part of me was present. So I didn't do any art when I first came out, and I didn't want to, because it was kind of like a sacred practice for me. It was like, okay, I don't want to taint this idea by, I don't want to say minimizing it, but making it something monetary, or saying like I forced this into existence, or this was my sacred journey, so to speak, So like, it meant something to me, and I didn't want to see it any differently. So until recently, I haven't been doing art. I just started recently doing the art in the juvenile halls, doing it with kids, trying to give them some of this experience and see, what they can get out of this. And of course, as kids, I think it's really important to bring the visual arts in there, because they literally can't say what they feel. Like, the part of their brains aren't developed, right? So this gives them an opportunity to kind of backdoor things and explore what other people are experiencing and develop their empathy, And I always tell people, if you can't feel your pain, I can't relate to yours, So that's the first step in developing our humanity, is to acknowledge our own experience and share that with someone else in a meaningful way. So since I've been home, it's been a journey, but lately it's been waking up, and I'm definitely starting to feel that fire burning, and going, okay, I'm going to explore all these amazing mediums out here, and, different situations. And, it's a part of me that is sacred. So I'm glad to see it kind of like coming back, because I wasn't sure if it would. So it's good to be here with you guys today.
Kenneth, I wanted to ask you about your artistic practice now, because I know you have been working on a new body of work, and just wanted to give you the floor to talk about the pieces that you're working on now.
Can you say the last part for me again?
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about what you're developing now and kind of the because when I actually went inside to visit Kenneth, it was the first time we actually met in person, because we've been calling and writing letters, and that was really special. But I got to see the art room that he's creating. He's now at a new location, and he's creating a new art room based on the blueprint that you both created, that him and Christian created. And you were working on some pieces where you had women with flowers coming out of their heads, and this kind of garden landscape with figures. So just wanted to give you the floor to talk about what you're working on now.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny that I think I'll talk a little bit about building, the art program here. And one of the biggest differences that has changed from the time when I was at Lancaster with Christian is that art has become a vehicle to communicate to, various different people. But then I've learned that, just here at Chino, the culture has been.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
That their incarceration will encompass the artwork as well. And in terms of what you can say and how you say it in the artwork. So a lot of the art that I'm focusing on at this moment, this new body of work, is directly kind of playing with that idea that I'm not only incarcerated in terms of my physical body, but my imagination and my creativity is also incarcerated. So the idea of, trying to cultivate this landscape in a way that allows me to do what comes natural, just to say and to be the person that I know that I am. And I think that just like tending to a garden, there are weeds that need to be plucked, right? There's a pruning process that needs to happen. Sometimes you have to start over and toil the soil. But I think overall, the objective in which I'm trying to talk about within the artwork and within the culture here is to allow people to not be, incarcerated in some of the most intimate parts of who we are, our imagination, our creativity. These are spaces that need to be free of politics and free to grow and to flourish, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you, Kenneth.
Okay. Is he good? I hope that room does come about, because Ezequiel, when we were doing the program in Chino, which we still have our program in Chino and in 14 prisons across the state, we were trying so hard to start an art room. I know you all were trying, we were trying, but it was staying in the gym. But there was something really beautiful about it being in the gym, because it's almost like this big circus. Because if you can imagine, which we also have in multiple different institutions, so unlike where they had a space just for art, what most of the prisons have is you're in culinary, you're in a classroom, you're in the gym, you're wherever they'll let you have an art class. And because our program often uses university students and university faculty and artists who are both currently incarcerated or not incarcerated, it's very mixed, diverse teaching teams. We would usually teach in a place where there would also be someone from the prison staff, especially if our students were there, because the university, that's part of what we do. So it put us in these odd places. But if you can imagine a giant gym that's mostly concrete, And then there's these little islands of different types of classes. So there's like painting over here and yoga over there and creative writing over here and what else? Collage, flower making. Ezequiel taught flower making. It was so popular. It was amazing. And so it's like, it is like an art space. It is like a little bit of like a carnival, a community within something that you would never imagine, that type of experience. But one thing I want to mention is the reason that we bring art history or visual culture into the classes is when I first started, there were two things that struck me. One, what you've heard multiple times, people saying, oh, you bring the humanity, or now I feel human. Like, I don't know about you, I had never thought about my humanity. I mean, have you ever considered that it's a privilege to be treated humanely? If you haven't, then you're like me, where it's like a privilege that you've never had that cross your mind, because lots of people are not treated that way. So that really struck me, that that's a privilege, that just to feel your humanity. And so that part, was really important. And then also this idea that so many artists felt they were in this little bubble. And so I wanted them to know you're part of a big history, you're part of a big world. You're not just, a person with a number or a person who, whatever your reason you're here, like you're an artist as well, and there's a whole story that you're part of. So we brought in different types of art history, and I will never forget the day I walked in and one of my graduate students was teaching in Chino. You might have been in the class. They allowed us a projector for like a hot second. It's gone now. And he had on the wall institutional critique, and he was teaching a lesson about institutional critique, which is an approach to contemporary art. And I was just like, the irony in the prison. And so, but we did that to try to help open up my...
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Because a lot of the style was that very tight realism that Ezequiel was speaking of. And of course, that's amazing and powerful, and you'll see more skills of that there than on the outside often. But there's so many other approaches. So just to open up the mind, not to say don't do that, but to say, hey, maybe there's other options. So that was something that came up. And that's like, maybe I want to bring it over to you because we could shift gears a little bit to like exhibiting that type of work, because we both come out of the contemporary art world and then also the world of arts in prison, and there's both a connection and also, at least originally, a very big separation. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you started your work?
Sure. Actually, well, Annie and Christian and Kenneth were a really big part of me entering into this space. But Annie started the Prison Arts Collective almost 25 years ago. And this whole 10. Oh, sorry.
You're fine. I'm on it. It's longer.
I'm not really good at math. That's why I'm in art. But
Me either. Maybe it was 25.
it felt like a monumental amount of time. But anyway, when I was first delving into this space, there wasn't a show like the show that we have now at the Wendy. I wasn't really seeing that, and now there's a show at the MoMA that's now traveling about incarceration. And what I really admired about what Annie was doing was you saw this a long time ago, and I was working at contemporary galleries in Spain, and then here in New York, and then here, and I spent a lot of my lunch breaks going to museum shows and I just couldn't get enough of seeing contemporary art. And then when I saw a series by Kenneth and Christian, the series that you did on shame, I was really blown away by what I saw, because I was like, this kind of work I could easily see at MoMA. I could easily see, as at Gagosian, at a lot of the big contemporary galleries, but I just wasn't seeing it as part of the canon. It was usually art that was by incarcerated artists was classified as outsider art, or it was really pigeonholed as a specific part of history that wasn't was an incarcerated artist. So what Kenneth was speaking about thinking about incarceration and freeing ourselves from that label, and what it really means to be an artist, that really intrigued me when I started Huma House, and it originally started because I was going to volunteer at San Quentin, but then the lockdown happened and I wasn't able to go. And I learned what was happening inside prison during COVID, which was a lot of people were being put in one cell. People who were sick were putting in the same cell as people who were healthy. And I wanted to put together, I curated an art show of people who were actually inside, whereas actually, it was happening, and they were sending me artworks of, as like a political protest. And I was connected with Annie, who connected me to artists inside, and also with Christian, who connected me to Kenneth. So Kenneth was part of our first show. But exhibiting it was really exciting because I hope with Huma House, like what we're doing is to get away from that label as like an outsider artist, but just to be part of the canon. So.
Thank you. Yeah. That's so, it's so, I think, and I don't know, I kind of think this is a question for you all. I don't know. But it's similar to many different artists who are not white male Western artists, who like historically were sort of like women artists or black artists or indigenous artists, which is a beautiful and amazing thing if that's like your chosen way you want to identify. Everyone should choose to identify how they want, and some people want to identify initially with some other aspect of their identity besides artists, but it shouldn't be forced on us, right? And I think it's a little bit the same with currently or formerly incarcerated artists, where it's leads with that. And that should be the choice of the artist. It shouldn't be the choice of society, and I think society places that on, and in many cases now, because it is becoming a little bit more, I don't know, common, I will say, it's maybe a little sensationalized, which isn't the reason to be excited about it, right? It's the reason to be excited about it is because of the work and because of that amazing human resilience to be creative in your darkest hour. Like, it's so impressive, and that, I feel like, is what should drive it. We had our first show in 2015 at CB1 Gallery, which doesn't exist anymore, but Clyde Beswick, like big shout out to Clyde, because he was the only, yes, big shout out to Clyde. Because I said, Clyde, we want to do this show, it's these artists who are incarcerated. Great, let's do it. And everyone else was like, wait, in a gallery? Wait, what? In a gallery? No, that goes over in that like community space. Like, there was no understanding that it should live in a gallery. It's like, no, we want it in a gallery. And now I think that's much more common. Like Meetra was speaking about, and like Meetra really started doing and making the changes. But it did take time. So I'm curious if you all, what do you think about that? Like, should it be, yeah, what do you think, Ezequiel? You're nodding. Do you have a thought on that? Like, that idea of like artists who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, or artists, or just artists, like how do you, it's important, but do we lead with that? Right. What do you think? And then Christian too. And Ken.
So I'm sorry, could you repeat the question one more time, please?
Yeah, the idea of artists who are incarcerated or are formerly incarcerated, oftentimes in the world of looking at art, they'll be defined by that. So it'll be like these are like an artist who is in prison, or this is an artist who's formerly incarcerated, where that can be meaningful, but is it the whole thing? Like, so how do you feel about, for yourself or for others, that idea? Like, you don't want to take it away, but how do we make it just a part of the story?
Okay, got it. Thank you. So for me personally, I've come across different people, and I believe that every single person is different in this case. I've met people that don't want nothing to do with what happened in the past. They don't want nothing to do with them being associated with being formerly incarcerated. On a personal level, every time I go teach a class, art class or a theater class, I always share my story and where I learned these skills from, because it's part of my life and it's part of my story. For me personally, I have no problem with being introduced as a formerly incarcerated artist or formerly incarcerated individual, because it is part of my story. You know, I spent 12 years in prison, and I can just erase that by not talking about it. So for me personally, I think it makes it okay for me, but I think it just depends on each individual. because there's also some individuals that might say, look, I just want to be introduced as an artist, or I just want to be mentioned as an artist in what I'm doing now. I don't want to talk about the past no more. I would actually respect that part, but on a personal level, I always share my story. I always share my testimony because it's important to share that I was a little kid at one point that didn't know what's going on in the world and decided to make bad choices because people were applauding those bad choices and not the good choices I was making in life. And having the opportunity to do things through art where I don't need people to clap for me no more because I'm clapping for myself from the inside with happiness and joy for doing these things, you know, for putting paint on a canvas, for doing theater with people, for sharing theater with little kids and with other people in the community. That's where it's at for me. And that's what's transformed my life within the art thing. But I still share that, you know, I am formerly incarcerated. I served 12 years in prison, and right now being on the call, and I just want to mention this. I got a flashback. It's been a while since I heard your call is being monitored and recorded. I was like, whoa, wait a second. Who's next on the phone? You know, it was like a quick thing that happened there. I just want to throw it out there, but it's the reality. It's something I live. It's something I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. And if I could share my story with an individual, a teen, a youth that's struggling with something, maybe they could open up and learn that there's better choices to be made in life than to go down a negative path. And if I don't share that I was down that negative path before, they're not going to believe me. They're going to, you don't know what you're talking about. So it's best for me to just always share my testimony because there's a lot of people like Annie Buckley, her mom, who helped me in my journey be the person that I am today. So I'm okay with it.
That's what's it. For me, I found when I was teaching inside, this actually became a key point, or I would see when they were getting to the point that I wanted them to get to, which is usually you start art and you're doing representational art, like you're copying it, you're trying to develop a skill set, you know, and then at some point they do start asking deeper questions, and those deeper questions lead to the idea that, well, I don't want you to paint a waterfall that's outside of prison. I want you to paint something that's right in front of you. Like all of the profound artists that really blow your mind, it's their direct experience they're sharing with you. It's an intimacy. There's something they're giving to you from their direct experience. It isn't a concept. And anything outside of the prison walls is a concept. It's not real to you and there anyway. So the most abstract idea for a prisoner is to go, hey, paint the stool in front of you, or paint that fence line, or the very thing you're trying to escape with the art. Most people are trying to escape from the place with the art. So when I invite them to live in their space with the art and say, like, what does that make you feel? How does that, you know, and then they actually start seeing their space differently. They start seeing themselves differently. And I think along the way, there's this epiphany that you can't ever, in anything in your life, be anything other than what you are, right? Like your whole life experiences led to this person you are today. And if at some point you start valuing who that person is, well, you also have to value that history. You don't want to deny it, right? So it doesn't become something you're avoiding. It becomes an intimate part of your journey that hopefully will help you and somebody else along the way, right? So I think that art helps find that narrative for themselves and become okay with it and not, you know, be ashamed of the journey they've had to have to be the person they are today, I think. Yeah.
I love that.
On that note, I'll ask this to Kenneth and then we can do a Q&A. Kenneth, has your, just touching on what Christian was talking about, has your artistic journey, has it helped you like dig up stuff from your past and move through it? Or did you have that experience that Christian was talking about where you were painting more things that weren't right in front of you?
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Or did you find that painting things that were like a direct experience to you was really helping you move through things from your past and present? Oh, sorry, Kenneth, will you start again? I had the volume down.
No, I was saying I'm having a hard time understanding your question. I didn't hear you.
Oh, okay. I asked, how has your, if at all, how is your art a reflection of your past and present?
Oh.
Like just the subject matter.
I feel like for the longest I've been putting my past under a microscope. I'm on a continuous search to find truth, like just in terms of the narrative in which I was told, in which I grew up, the narratives that are present within my incarcerated experience now. I'm looking at these things critically and analyzing them and playing with them and recalling them in the artwork. And, in efforts just to, if not to do anything else, but to understand it a little bit better. And then to almost not to provoke conversation, but to really provoke a choice. I could adhere to the narratives of my past, or I cannot. I could make the choice to accept the narratives in which are placed on me in my present, or I cannot. And I think that there's a lot of liberation in having that choice. If I can reflect on moments before this realization, there's a lot of poverty in the idea of just being stuck inside a context without ability to escape it. And I think that, the work has been that. It has been liberating in that way to investigate my own past and to probe the present.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kenneth.
Thank you guys. So beautiful and so moving. I love what we just heard. So I always learn something from working across from people with different experiences, and it was super interesting to hear your thoughts on the question. So thank you, all of you. So it's your turn, folks. Does anyone have questions for us?
We like questions.
And I always tell my classes I'm not afraid of a little silence, so we can just sit for a moment and wait while you think. I'm sorry. Oh, so does anyone have any questions? We have one. We have two.
Yeah.
I'll break the ice.
Come on in.
A quick question. I guess it's a bit ironic. Most of us came here for political reasons, I think, because we've never been incarcerated. We're probably all left-leaning. I'm going to make that assumption anyway.
I think there's a mix.
And the walls are filled with a lot of art from political prisoners, Soviet, Hungarian, et cetera, which is kind of interesting, which is completely, in some ways, different from your practice. So my question becomes, your art practices comes from a very personal place. Is there any time when you think it's going to enter the realm of a political place, or has it been political for you?
I think for me, being a human being is political in this environment, right? Because if you're talking about punitive segregation, I'm not a human being. I'm an action or the thing I committed a long time ago. I'm not the person I am today. So when we evolve or we become contributors in our community, or we demonstrate the very things that they say that we can't be as a super predator or whatever it is they want to label us with, it's like, that to me is the political move, showing up, being present, and demonstrating the fact that, everybody can transform in the right environments, and I think the science nowadays is really pointing towards the idea that what changes us is new experiences. So if we have a society that's repeating the same experience over and over again, we're not going to change as a community, right? So we need to create new experiences, I would say.
The question was, is the art political?
Yeah, how is your work, do you consider your work political, or are you going to make your work that political?
I think that my work is directly, yes, it's absolutely political.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It's got perfect timing.
In terms of, it's a direct negation of the current policy of how we incarcerate people and how we treat incarcerated people. I think that for an artist on the inside, observing my surroundings, I'm talking about my experience in a way that would be viewed politically. And you know, I hope that it does have a political outcome, that it does change some policies, and it does motivate people to move. So I would say that yes, my work definitely cross sections with somebody would view it as political.
Okay, thank you.
Is-
Go to the next question.
No, I think Ezequiel had to answer. Did you want to answer that one or no?
Sure. The question was if art is political for you?
I think it's like if you consider your art political. Yeah.
Not necessarily, but I think I made a political statement once with one of my paintings, and I think that's the one we had exposed at CB1 Gallery. That was and it almost got me in trouble when I was in prison. It's this painting, and I'm sorry for people that support Trump, but it was a painting of Trump with this face cracked in half, and it was a political statement for me. I think I was trying to make a political statement. And I think at that time, I wanted to see how my artistic skills could go into the political world. But honestly, I never really explored it into that way. But for me, it's more of an expressive thing. It's more of me being free through art, me expressing myself through art, me getting away from my problems through art instead of substances. Yeah, or hurting other people. So yeah.
I forgot about that piece because mostly, yeah, your work isn't like overtly political, but we almost didn't get to publish the book because it was on the cover of the book, and after a bunch of the works, but one of them was Ezequiel, and then after the book was about to come out, the election happened, and then the warden's like, oh, now I don't know if we can show that anymore. But it was allowed, so it was good. But anyway, I just think it's really important to think there's not such a binary between personal and political. The personal is political. I know that's sort of said a lot, but it's actually very true. It comes out of like feminist art. And I think if you think about the fact of a person in a very oppressed political situation, like Christian was saying, making art that it almost doesn't matter if it's a flower or Trump's face bisected or what have you, like that is, I think there's a lot to be said of that itself being a political act, and like the opportunity for someone who does not have any avenue for choice or agency or expression, expressing themselves and having a choice. I think that is inherently a social, political, personal action. I don't think it can be separated.
Hey, allow me to think out loud here for a moment and see if I can pull the question forward. I'm really curious about this moment that you're at. I'm so impressed with all of you and all the work that you're doing. And I just was wondering, kind of to surf a little bit on this kind of discussion that we're having about where the art fits, right? And this sort of intersectionality that's happening between, does it live within an incarceration environment? Does it live in the art world? Does it live in a social justice space? And so I want to ask the artist and also the other types of artists, the artists that are leading organizations and community efforts, and just sort of to talk about this amazing moment that this institution, the Vendia Museum, has stepped up. Right? They've stepped up as this intersectional host for this moment, for this opportunity, and its resonance. It's resonating out. And so those of you who are here today speaking about your practices and your engagement, I just wanted to know if you would speak for a little bit about how that fits. And I'm not sure why, but I am tapping my heart. And because it feels like deep care and love to me. It does. And I just wonder, one, I want to give you a hand and applaud, but I also want to hear you talk about what it feels like to you to embrace and own this opportunity, this moment.
Yeah, that's a great question because for me, it felt like we're starting a gallery. I haven't formally announced it yet, but Huma House is starting a commercial gallery. So, yeah, it was really it's a really exciting moment because I feel like there's this cosmic shift and the zeitgeist is very open to hearing different perspectives. You know, to hearing Kenneth's perspective, to hearing Christian and Ezequiel, and to really talking openly about incarceration, politics, and I was really driven to start a gallery because I felt like as much terror is happening in the world, there's also there's these polar opposites that are emerging, and one is like really full of love and full of positivity and hope and openness, and I feel like it's an amazing moment for Kenneth to show his work to the world, and it's an exciting time. And for me, I feel like there's so many voices that are being represented, and that there's this like rainbow of positivity, like vibrating against this kind of negative force. And I really feel like this kind of show that the Vendée had, and then also the show that's happening at MoMA, or that happened at MoMA by the curator Nicole Fleetwood, the book that she published about artists who are incarcerated and them being part of the canon of art history. I don't think this could have happened. That book would have had such a big reception, 10 years ago or 30 years ago. So I think we're at a really, as you pointed out, a really exciting crux where, there's like a tectonic shift, and it's an exciting time to be an artist and a gallerist. So.
Did any of the three artists want to answer that? Oh, did any of the three artists want to answer that question? I have a big picture.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on that. When people started coming in that were actually artists or were trained artists, they kind of revealed to us in there that they didn't believe that prison art was real. They just thought there was illustrative art in prison, meaning tattoos and logos, and like we didn't know what art was. Like we couldn't conceive what it was, and that the artist community didn't see it as art. They just saw it as reproduction of art, or like there was no expression in it, right? And so it was an interesting idea for us as individuals to say, well, what would it mean to be expressive in this space? Because that was almost a challenge to us to say, like, well, I feel that my art is definitely part of me and it's real, but is it something that's relatable? Is it something that another human being can relate to? Can they receive it? And so when our art enters into spaces like this, it's saying yes. It's saying, hey, what you say, feel, think is another human being relates to it and might even be moved by it, right? And so I think that it's very important that these spaces open up and allow people a voice in this space, because it goes the other direction. It validates somebody that, it may never be heard at all.
One more question? Oh, should we do or two more?
Oh, I just want to say one quick thing. I don't believe in the term outsider art, because I'm like, outside what? Mm-hmm. That's what I want to say. I don't know. Are we picking or? Okay. You? I guess so.
Yeah.
Oh,
all right.
I guess we're taking that back. Okay. I don't know.
I don't discriminate. Thank you. First of all, I've been riveted. I'm loving this whole event. I found out about it about an hour before it was happening. I saw it in the local thing, and I was like, I can walk there in 10 minutes. I'm going to this thing. I just needed something like this. So I'm a musician, and many, many years ago, I was part of a small group that went to some prisons, men's prisons, and we played. We didn't get to work with the guys. We just went in and we played music, and it was a treat or whatever, you know. And it was a very, it was a very unusual experience for me. So I looked out there. We're playing jazz, and we're playing different types of music, and looking out at the guys, and I saw the segregation, and I just saw the distancing, and it was very, very moving for me going in and doing that. I wish, hearing you guys talk, I wish we had had an opportunity to talk with the guys, because what you've had to say and what you've had to say, and Kenneth there, it really is a way to humanize with the people that are not in prison. I'm not going to use the word outsider, but whatever. You know, it is a reminder, and it is a very critical reminder of everything you have to offer. And the art, I imagine your art would be very different if you hadn't been in prison, or if you're not in prison, Kenneth. And so that is a part of it. I mean, you know, as a musician, I teach also, and people say, oh, you know, they're looking for how can I be a better musician, how can I be a better jazz musician? Well, you certainly don't have to go and become a drug addict to play like Charlie Parker, you know, but what I really wonder is when you started the art rooms that you started and you were teaching, I just want to put this whole afternoon on pause and let me just think about all this stuff and come back tomorrow and ask you better questions. But what really struck me is that it seems like the guys came into the room willing to be vulnerable, willing to put this other stuff to the side, the racism and the anger and the heartbreak and the whatever it was, but something made the guys come into the room and be willing to be vulnerable, and really something deep inside wanting to express themselves and wanting to feel whatever they had to feel in a safe space. What do you think is the line that has to be drawn for a guy? One guy is willing to do that and welcomes it and becomes the artist that you guys have become and sharing it now, and other guys just can't cross that emotional or mental or vulnerability line. And that really fascinates me, what from a human emotional level makes some of the guys willing to take that step, which has obviously transformed your lives, and other guys that didn't, and what do you think could be done to invite more to do that?
I personally think it's environmental. You know, I think that it has to do with the space. I know that a lot of people show up initially for resources. They're like, hey, I want some paints, or hey, you know, I might go to a meditation class because they got incense. I don't even want to meditate. I just want the incense. You know, like you just show up, you know, like, cool, I got something, let's do this. You know, I'm out of the cell for a minute. But in that process, I always tell people I believe in the process. I believe in what we do, because if once somebody unlocks their humanity, it's on autopilot. They don't make that decision. It's just a part of them, and they connect with other people. So as soon as that connection is made and the environment is accepting of it, you're going to see people open up. You're going to see people allow themselves to be vulnerable, and more importantly, to transform that narrative into a strength narrative. When I talk to the people I was working with, I'm going like, what did you do not to feel this feeling? You know, you hurt other people, you put your own life in jeopardy, you basically lost everything you actually wanted as a human being for the idea of safety, right, or control. You know, and so for you to challenge this idea, or to set it aside, or to look beyond what that is and actually feel that emotion, is the most courageous thing you'll ever do. To share it with somebody else and be that much more vulnerable is even one more step of courage and strength. So it's reframing how you see courage and strength versus being fear-based strength, where you learn your strength through fear, or is it actual strength where you learn it through an accomplishment and interconnection? So for me, I would say that's the gap. It's different for every person, but it's the availability of that experience. Everybody will make the choice to be a human if it's really there, I promise you.
This is a question for Ezequiel. Do you see a difference in the impact you have teaching art and teaching theater? Is there a big difference? Also, the audiences. You said you taught young children, and then you taught adults and older kids.
So I believe, in my experience, I see that they're intertwined. I believe that they coexist hand in hand with every other form of art practices, such as music, such as writing. I'm also a writer. I'm also doing creative writing right now, taking a script writing class with Edward Pomeranz on Zoom. And I believe it all intertwines with each other. I want to just highlight what our brother here is saying of all these emotions that are going with it. So the theater practice that I work on, we work with 4 primary emotions: with happiness, with anger, with fear, with sadness, and how do those actually feel and look like, expressing them. Most of our time we're taught to be quiet, to shut up when we're kids, when we're being loud and noisy and prestigious, running around a little brats, and adults are like, shut up, you stay over there, don't do this, don't do that, don't. It's all these kinds of restrictions that eventually turn kids to explode in all this range of emotions, And within art, I see that it's the same process as well. Maybe it's not necessarily talked about in certain practices. In other practices like therapeutic art, it is talked about with emotions, the color theories, how colors are related with emotions and the feelings. So I see it depends on how it's taught. I believe that that's the way it will make impact, because since I've been out here in society in Tecate, Baja California, Mexico, I've come across many artists and a lot of teaching artists and people that are teaching art. However, people are teaching art here for a monetary reason, not necessarily to change people's lives, as the Prison Art Collectives program is doing it. For example, there's many good teachers that are teaching people to do these things, but they're not teaching them to become human, because now there's a competitiveness of my art is better than your art, and the Prison Art Collectives is not like that. It's like, oh man, we're helping each other, we're building each other, and we're trying to scaffold on each other. But I see as the way and the approach is being taught, because I also see theater classes here, and I hear a lot of my students that come to me and tell me, look, my prior theater directors were so rigid and they were so harsh on us, and you're like so chill, you're so relaxed, you're like, yeah, do whatever you want on stage, and that's, I believe it has to do with the approach. Like the Prison Art Collective approach is a very humane approach of doing it. And back then, I remember it was community-based art program. It wasn't Prison Art Collectives when I was part of it, when it first started. And that's what it's about, it's community. It's how we come together in a community, and how we work together to do something, whether it's a piece of art or whether it's a play on the stage. I get on the stage, we get fully makeup on, and it's amazing, and it's a way to let things out, bad things, and receive good things, and release all this endorphins and serotonin that's going on in the body and the brain. And the same thing happens when I paint and when I teach to paint. So I believe it has to do with the approach on how we teach.
Thank you so much. I just want to add one thing to that. And I think like what Ezequiel's saying about it started as community-based art, but even that was just descriptive. It really started as just, how do we expand access to the arts? And so who wants that? And it turned out that a prison in Chino was one of the people who said, we want that. And then all of the things you're hearing about grew out of that. So I just think that's super important to realize that it's about being responsive and not about, you need this thing. It's like being responsive to the community, to the needs, the participants. So we were called that because that's, if you study art education, that's like an approach to art. And then it grew and it evolved, and we talked inside with the folks inside and folks outside about what the name should be, and there was a lot of discussion about it. So I just think that that little seed does speak to how we continue to grow. Thank you for sharing that. And the fact that you're out doing that now is so beautiful.
Okay, we can do 2 more.
Hello, my name is Mian. I'm an alcoholic. Wrong group. I don't know much about jail, and I don't know much about art, just enough as you would know. But from what I've seen in movies and shows, which I know is not the same, aren't there groups of like territory, like, I don't know, certain people, like it's tough, right? How do they feel about art being made there or about there? Like, is it accepted? Is it a fruity thing? Or, like, how is it tolerated?
Art in prison in general, you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah, by the other inmates. I'm sorry. Yes, like, because there's like groups of.
Yeah, I don't think prisoners have been. I think art's one of those neutral territories, like animals, dogs, or something. Like, you can't help but love a dog. Everybody loves a dog, no matter where they're, like your cat. It's like it draws it out of you. I think art is something that always draws connection. Because everybody, they might want something up in their house that reminds them of their mom or their dad or loved one lost or their dog, or something. And it's like people draw to each other to share in that experience. And if you really think about it, most of the time in prison, unless you draw it in there, it doesn't exist to the people out here, meaning you can't go in and take pictures in prison. I mean, you have to get passes and approvals and all kinds of stuff, as I'm sure they can attest to, many levels of security you're going to go through to take, and they'll look through your pictures and make sure the pictures, they like them before you take them home too, so you ain't going to just get any old picture out of there. So for you to share anything in there from that space out here is always welcome for us in there, because it's somebody getting a glimpse of our life inside, so I'd say yes. I don't see any boundaries being made with that.
I think you both know, obviously, way more than I do about that. But I do want to share a story of a student who came to me and said, "This is my first time in class and I had so much fun." I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here." He said, "Well, I've been out here in the yard watching you guys walk by for 3 years." And he's like, "I was scared to join because they're teasing me for it. And so I didn't want to go. And I finally came, and I'm so glad I came, and I'm going to walk out of here proud with my paper flower." He was in your class, Ezequiel. And he put it in his pocket. So I think that potentially there's some experiences where people are teased for it or made fun of it. I don't know how common that is, but I always remember that gentleman because it was such a limb he went out on.
You know what that is that she would do art that was a little different. Like we did like portraits and, we would do more painting type stuff. And if you did anything outside of that box where you're making flowers or doing, a little softer stuff, like people might give you a little mess over it. But like I said before, you don't care because you were just a human being for 5 minutes. So you step out laughing at them like, "Oh, you don't know what's going on in there. Cool. I got more space in there." The mic.
You want to use this one?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My question is about mediums, and please feel free to stop me if I'm wrong. My assumption is that there are possibly some limitations on accessibility around certain mediums in prison would be just, yeah, true. So I'm curious, you can answer, well, anything you want, any one of the following. Did that shape your practice in some way, starting with limitations around the materials? Is there a story you can think of where you used something other than typical or standard art materials in your work? Was there something you really couldn't wait to get your hands on when you got out? Any of the above. And for you two, I just wanted to ask if there's one thing that if everyone in this room did when they went home that might take like 5 minutes today that would make any kind of actual practical difference for your organizations, what would that be?
What's that?
Have Kenneth answer that?
Yeah, let him do it. No.
Kenneth, do you want to answer that one? Did you hear the question?
I can't. I need you to iterate it for me.
Yeah, it was about limitations in your art practice. Is there, because the person who asked the question.
What materials do you use that aren't standard to do expressive art? And what would
This call and your telephone number will be.
And what would you choose to have if you could have any medium available to you?
Okay. I think I've used, anything is a resource. And I think having no resource is played a benefit into how creative I can be. Incarcerated artists incarcerated people are natural problem solvers. You try to innovate and find ways around the limitations that exist. So, it's not having resources is a crutch, but it also has its benefit. Because when you do come across something that is obscure for this environment, to be honest, oil paint is obscure for this environment. We are not allowed to have oil paint, but you find interesting ways to utilize what you have, and you build techniques based off those limitations to accentuate what you have. If I had a choice of a particular material, I don't know. I think I just want, better quality material, a better quality of paints and the brushes, canvas, and things like that. And I think also part of the limitation is not knowing what the possibilities are and what exists in terms of materials. There's probably things that I would want immediately if I knew what they were. But I think that's a part of the incarcerated experience that unknown.
Thank you so much. That's a great
I've seen people paint with M&Ms, like they'll take the brush and, they'll make brushes out of their hair, and they'll take the M&Ms and get them wet and then paint on top of cards with them, and paint with coffee, dried coffee. You can do that kind of like a monochromatic type of almost, raw sienna type look. I've seen people use, a lot of use state soap and materials with pulping paper, and you can create sculpture out of that. We've used basically, floor wax to create, sealers that create shine on things. We use anything and everything at our disposal. I showed one of my family members a brush that somebody made out of their beard, and it looks like some crazy goat beard, and it's just a brush, and it's, he's like, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, that's my buddy's beard." He's like, "Oh, get away from it." I'm like, "Oh, all right, well, it's not dirty, and we washed it." But it's like we made it out of anything we can get our hands on, including ourselves. So there's no boundaries as far as the creative aspect of it. Like, you'll do whatever you need to do something convincing or interesting or make it more personalized. As far as materials go, I think the things that don't get explored in there is that there's almost what he touched on at the end there. There's so much more than just painting. Since I've been out, they got resins, they have, you can do pouring, there's just so many different ways to express yourself. And I think that would be a really big advantage to bring inside, because people get intimidated by that. If they see me do a portrait, they're like, "I can't do that." Even when I'm teaching another student and they're really good, really fast, that actually puts other people off because they become self-conscious. But if you do something that requires the set outcome might not even be set. You do like a cup pouring exercise and then hit it with a gun and all these cells start popping out, and it's just like this gorgeous thing at the end. It's like they feel connected to it, but it's their creative process, but it isn't, there's no expectation, and I think that type of artistic process on any level, whether it's on a stage or it's with mediums or even just, testing your own limitations, I think is really valuable inside of that space. And it could be anything. It could be anything. And they will be receptive to it. I really do.
I like to share my reality with supplies, because it's something interesting, hearing the limitations of it. And thank you, because this brings me personally to a reality for me about art. For me, art, and it's beautiful that we talk about all these feelings and emotions and being back to connecting as human beings. And I think that's the most beautiful, therapeutic, medicinal part about art. But for me personally, art has always been about money. I do portraits, and I did this portrait when I was in prison. It was in 2019. So this is one of the last portraits I did. And this material, interesting enough, I work with acrylics and oil on canvas. And it's very difficult at that time when I was at CIM to get materials, because we didn't have a hobby program. And the only venue that we had, I don't want to say we, that the rest of the inmates had to get art supplies, was through the prison art collectives programs. And I want to share that I was one of the people that was privileged to know how to hustle my art with the guards. So I would actually sell my paintings to the prison guards so they could bring me art supplies. I would do murals in the prison and the buildings. I would take all my little supplies that a guard would bring me, and I would put like 3 times more what I would actually need so I could get it to my friends' hands so they could continue to paint in their cell and try to share it as much as possible. So my teacher at that time, he was teaching me how to, make the best out of the paint, how to recycle paint, how to stretch the paint as much as possible, not be wasteful. And we learned that practice. And next thing I knew, we just had so much art supplies coming into the prison when it was still not allowed. We didn't have no hobby program yet, but we had all the materials you could think about. We had stretcher to stretch the canvas. We had like all the little stretcher things, the staples. We were getting the canvas. We were getting canvas roll. We were getting out of control because the guards wanted our art. And that's when I learned and I realized my art has value. There's value behind the work I'm doing. Behind my therapy, there's something more to it. And that's when I started giving a higher value to my artwork. And for me, it has always been about money. And every time I received those paints by the guards, I would go out and sell them to my friends out in the yard so everybody could have art supplies. My purpose was to try to flood the yard with so many art supplies where the guards would be like, hey, well, everybody has them. Let's just approve the program. And I think they did it as right before I got out, they started pre-approving the program. There was a lot of, I worked at the main office with the guards. So there was a lot of my friends that were getting their materials taken away because it was contraband at that time to have a paintbrush, paint, and a canvas. And I was getting that to their hands. And it was like, your co-worker brought it to me. I got it to his hands. You went to search his cell. You don't like the fact that he's doing art and changing his life. You take his stuff away from him. It comes back to me at the prison's office. I get it and I take it back to the inmate. It was a cycle in there. And I'm very proud of it because I was giving those materials, even if it was illegal, I don't care. These guys were having the opportunity to paint while they were in their cells. And today, I believe that they now have their hobby program approved and everybody has access to better supplies than when I was there. I had access to it unlimited because I was doing stuff with the guards, but not the rest of the population. I wanted to share that, and it was quite the experience. And it's always been about money, and it continues to be about money.
So to answer the question of what's something everyone here can do when they go home to support our orgs, the immediate thing that came to mind.
This call and your and recorded.
The immediate thing that came to my mind was that because we're opening up a gallery, the first show is going to be Omid Mokri, and he's actually in this exhibition. He's the artist who painted the crown in one of the second galleries, the crown and the Persian, well, a lot of the Persian work. And so to support us would just be to go home and sign up for the mailing list for humagallery.com because we're going to be showing a lot of the artists that I've been working with for the past 3 years, and we're showing them in a commercial, in a gallery setting. So just to come out and support us on March 3rd or March 2nd, Saturday, March 2nd is going to be the opening of Omid's new show. He's been working on a whole new body of work since he was incarcerated for 10 years and now he's out and he's making this whole new body of work. So if you sign up for our mailing list, we'll send you the invite, and that's the most impactful thing, immediate thing right now I can think of. Yeah.
That's amazing. And it's Huma, H-U-M-A House, because some people I think, so just FYI, humagallery.com, humagallery.com. And for Prison Arts Collective, you can go look at our website, prisonartscollective.com. If you have the means and you're so inspired, you can make a donation. If you do make a donation, it does help us to provide more supplies. You just heard a lot about supplies. We can only bring in what's approved, but we're always working to get more and more things approved. We're always having requests for more programs, and we only have the funding that we do have for what's already going, which is a lot. But when we do have donations, it allows us to do things we can't do with our grant program funding. For example, buy pizza or cupcakes for a graduation, which probably sounds sort of silly, like expected, but we don't have it in our grant, and it makes a huge difference for our participants. We can, buy more supplies that aren't covered, so things like that. If you have the means, please join. And also please follow us on Instagram, on Facebook. I think we're maybe somewhere else, LinkedIn, I don't know. Prison Arts Collective, and just join the movement, join the work, join the community. Thank you. Thank you, Yus, and thank you, the Wende Museum.
I want to thank you, the 5 incredible and amazing speakers today. I think this was very profound, it was heartfelt, it was with a lot of humor, it was with a lot of wisdom, and I so much appreciate you. Thank you very much. Yeah.